What should have remained a mythological fairy tale is actually true. Discovered first back in 2002 in the Cerrejón, here are disturbing Titanoboa sightings people were never supposed to see. Giant snakes, such as the anaconda or boa, were probably tiny in comparison to some of these giant reptiles our ancestors painted on the walls. The biggest snakes that have ever been drawn and recorded, as of right now, were discovered in South America. Despite the fantastical art they found, this is just the tip of the iceberg for them, heavily speculating that there is more to be discovered here. Within the 10,000 ancient decor, the largest one that was discovered out of all of them was the 43-foot-long giant snake, very similar in length to the ancient Titanoboa. Alongside the biggest snake, there were 6 other giant snake drawings, not as long as the 43-foot-long one, but still terrifyingly large in comparison to the human drawings around it. There was also the theory that these were drawn from spiritual beliefs, with many snake worshippers believing in the good and evil that came from these creatures. Some people like to test their mortality and actively go out to try and capture these giant beasts. Uploaded to the channel Animal Wire, 2 men decided to travel down a river on a tiny fishing boat somewhere in Brazil, but they weren't planning on catching regular fish. The 2 of them managed to spot a giant snake out in the middle of the river, with a very full belly, might I add. For some reason, they decided it would be fun to try and go after it and grab it by the tail. Some people are literally just built differently, I guess. They're reaching out to this thing with their paddle to try to get it in closer, and this poor snake is desperately trying to get away. These things aren't a toy. They are insanely dangerous predators when you provoke them. Thankfully, the men in this video also got in some serious trouble after their video went viral, resulting in quite the fine after going against severe wildlife protection laws. Could you imagine your day job being the one to be called up about a snake in someone's ceiling? Yeah, there are people that are paid to take care of your giant snake problems. Somewhere in India, a woman called a company in the area to help deal with the giant snake that was hiding out in her ceiling. The video you're seeing here shows just that. The worker is very careful at opening a part of the ceiling, revealing its body. The worker is quick to locate the tail and grab it, but this obviously terrifies the snake and causes it to try and slither off. After this, it goes completely downhill from there. The ceiling comes crashing down, and we are now getting a solid visual at how big this thing actually is. I feel bad for the person who owns this house. You gotta clean this mess up afterwards. Thankfully, the video ends with the snake being secured properly by its head and no one got hurt. I truly believe snakes are more terrifying when they're in the water. They're much faster at getting to you. This alleged Titanoboa video definitely has me scratching my head, and this person managed to capture a striking visual from on top of a mountain of a bizarre, elongated creature floating along a clear blue lake. I think it's a snake, and man does it look long. I don't really know what else this thing could be, because it's way too curved to be some sort of log or some extremely large plant. It looks to be very close to a local beach area as well, where towards the end of the video, we see those dividers that pools usually use off on the far right. Hopefully, whatever this thing is, someone managed to report it so that people could clear out from the water. We don't need an accident to occur on such a lovely day. What are your thoughts about the Titanoboa? Let me know down below, and I will see you all in the next video. A terrifying 40-foot apex predator once slithered these lands, devouring crocodiles, taking on dinosaurs. Let's dive into the world of one of the most dangerous reptiles that has ever existed. I feel it's worse when you can't even see the snake coming towards you, making the hunting tactics of this predator living up to its name. This doesn't show the snake, but we are able to witness the sheer force of its movement beneath the water, making small ripples around it as it swims past the cameraman. Sometimes fish can cause this effect too, if they're big enough, but for a singular body of an animal to produce this much force, it has to be a big snake. For a split second, towards the water's edge, I could almost catch a glimpse of its body, and unless my eyes were playing tricks on me, that is one big snake. Some of y'all are too brave about getting this close to dangerous wildlife like this. Because of how unpredictable Mother Nature is, you might find yourself in a not so good predicament. For a long while, there was a rumor going around about an alleged billionaire by the name of Kelsey Warren, who supposedly had a Titanoboa locked up in his house. The first red flag about this guy was that he apparently had a jungle-themed section within his mansion. The second red flag, which is what got him on the radar, was an alleged picture of him being posted onto his Twitter page of him posing in his jungle-themed room. Not even an hour after it being uploaded, people were quick to notice a supposed giant snake in the background of his photo. The Central Bureau of Investigation had to get involved because thousands of people were reporting this guy. Upon searching his home, they didn't find anything at first until they came across a suspicious door with a rusted sign. When they opened the door, they apparently discovered the hidden Titanoboa locked within a cage. One of the agents working on the team tried to record a video of it, but for some reason was forced to have it wiped from his phone. To this day, the original tweet and the video remain lost in the endless void that is the internet. Majority of snakes are able to reproduce with themselves, but have you ever seen two giant snakes actually get together? This video is wild, because at first I couldn't really understand what I was looking at, and was almost convinced it was AI. But here we have a male snake wrapped around a female trying to fertilize her eggs. It is definitely one of the more rare sights to see, since snakes are solitary creatures. But just seeing how their bodies are so intertwined makes it look almost mutated. The video gets even crazier as we are watching this giant female snake drag the male into its burrow, really showing us the size comparison between the two sexes. That's usually the case with the majority of species though. While males may sport the funky colors to try and seduce the females, some of the females sport a larger body size. It's quite common with spiders as well. I don't think y'all understand how big some of our snakes can actually get. This one video on YouTube shows a great example of how big their bodies are in comparison to a human figure. And keep in mind, this guy is pretty beefed up as well. And yet the image of this giant snake crawling up its back makes him appear even smaller. Yeah, imagine having that thing wrap you in a tight hug. It's even amazing to witness how incredibly talented and strong snakes are, using their belly scales to help them climb up and across virtually almost everything. I couldn't even begin to imagine how it feels from the worker's end to feel this thing climbing up and over him, feeling every scale that's grabbing onto his body to hoist itself up, and not to mention the weight of these things. I know some snakes can weigh roughly around 100 pounds, but this guy definitely had to be more than that. You know, you're taking a peaceful walk through the woods to help clear your mind from the dumpster fire that is our planet, and you accidentally come across this terrifying thing staring down at you from the trees. It doesn't help that at first glance you wouldn't even notice it, since the color of their scales are meant to allow them to camouflage into the background. It's terrifying. You blink and you miss it. But why do snakes climb trees if they mainly hunt on the ground? Good question. They do this as an option to get closer to the sun. Since snakes are cold-blooded creatures, they rely on external sources to regulate their body heat. If by chance they are too cold and there is a bunch of trees and other foliage covering the sun, they will climb trees until they find the perfect spot that allows them to bask in the sun to warm them up. Same with hot days. They will then dip themselves in the pool to help cool themselves off. So don't freak out too much if you see a snake up in a tree. They might just be trying to get themselves a quick tan.
There have been some giant snake sightings out there in the world that will make you want to stay inside for the rest of your life. You see, in 2016, a terrifying snake that was 33 feet long and weighed over 800 pounds was found lurking in caves near a dam construction site in Brazil. Like, just imagine heading into work and seeing that. I fear I would pass out due to the fear. Now, this snake was discovered by the workers after they carried out a controlled explosion in the cave of Almeria in the northern state of Para. Now, video footage taken by one of the crew pans down the snake's enormous body, which measures 3 feet in diameter. Now, after finding this creature, the workers chained the animal to the crane and later lifted it up. It's claimed that the builders hurt the snake rather than leave it in its natural habitat, but that has not been confirmed. Regardless, it seems like the workers didn't know the snake was there when they started to work, and when they did find it, they chained it up up to protect themselves from the giant beast, which I can't blame them for, because it appears that snake could do some serious damage. Then in 2017, a giant snake was spotted by a security guard in Indonesia. Security guard Robert Nabadan encountered the snake on a palm oil plantation road. Now, unlike other people who would just walk away from the snake, like I would, he tried to catch the snake. Now, it had attacked him and they fought until Robert ended its life. Yes, surprisingly, he won the battle against the 26-foot long snake. Now, honestly, that is impressive. He did walk away with some serious injuries though, but he kept his community safe. Afterwards, the snake was then strung up for display at a village before it was chopped up, fried, and eaten. Robert told an Indonesian news outlet, "I tried to catch it, my hand was bitten, and I managed to wrestle it." Local police said that this snake had sunk its fangs into the guard's left arm and nearly severed it. Now, Robert did not give an exact reason for why he tried to catch the snake, but it was said that there were villagers who could not cross the road because of the snake. Varying reports say he was either trying to keep scared villagers safe or that he wanted to clear the road. An official then spoke out saying that these giant snakes were common in this area. There are at least 10 sightings of them a year. In the dry season, they come out looking for a drink. In the wet, they come out to take a bath in the rain. There are usually lots of mice in the palm oil plantations, and that's what they are hunting. Yeah, now I would just leave one of these snakes alone if I came face to face with it, not fight it. A giant snake skin found on a riverbank in the northeast United States has become a local legend in the town of Westbrook, Maine, known as Wessie. Now, sightings of the snake began in June 2016 when a woman filed a report with the Westbrook Police Department claiming to have seen a snake as large as a truck with a head the size of a basketball. Soon thereafter, a late shift police officer patrolling near the first sighting saw a large snake eating a mammal, possibly a beaver. And then on August 20th, a man walking along the river stumbled across the molted skin of a 12-foot long snake near the two other sightings. It said that the skin belongs to a female snake that's at least 10 to 12 years old based on the skin size. Now, the snake's genetic quirks also suggest that its ancestors were most likely from Peru or Bolivia, though the snake probably was bred in the United States. Jesus Rivas, a snake expert, said it would have to come from someone who either caught it or bought it somewhere, brought it here, and then decided to let it go for some reason. But given the snake's size and age, he suspects that its owners were dedicated, and he maintains instead that the snake got out of its enclosure. People who have a snake of this size are responsible keepers, and it's very unlikely that they don't have the awareness that the snake won't survive in the wild, he said. I doubt that it was released, more likely it escaped. Now, I would not want to run into that creature at the park. Now, there have been some real big snake sightings over the years. I mean, in 1959, Colonel Remy van Leerd of the Belgian Royal Air Force was on helicopter patrol when he spotted something interesting. He had flown in over 400 missions, and his eyes were trained to study the ground below, so he was really good at this kind of thing. But while he and his co-pilot were out that day, they saw a humongous snake, which Remy estimated to be over 50 feet in length. Now, according to experts, there's no scientific evidence that a 50-foot snake exists, but this wild story has people thinking it could have been the so-called extinct Titanoboa. Now, to help verify their story, Remy and his co-pilot took a single grainy photograph of the creature in question. Now, clearly, the image seems to depict what is undeniably a giant snake, looking massive in comparison to the nearby trees. Ivan Sanderson, a biologist and cryptozoology enthusiast, analyzed the document and came to the conclusion that the snake was not merely 50 feet long, but 200. Now, in his eyes, the dark shapes were certainly termite mounds, which could grow up to 26 feet tall and over 50 feet wide in that region. Regardless, it seems to be a giant snake that has no business being that big and terrifying. Now, some people think that the skeleton of a Titanoboa had been spotted on Google Earth. In a TikTok video that had 7.4 million views, it showed an image of this beast. This video was posted in March of 2022 by user user at Google Maps Fun and is now under the heading Creepiest Things Google Maps Recorded. Hidden on Google Earth, users believe this to be a giant snake. It's about 30 meters long and bigger than any snake caught before, the voiceover says, as it shows a satellite image of the bones on a beach. Now, users quickly speculated that the skeleton could have belonged to a prehistoric snake called the Titanoboa, and I mean, the skeleton was just under 100 feet long, and the largest Titanoboa ever recorded was 47 feet. Regardless, this creature was huge, and hey, maybe this was the same snake that Remy and his co-pilot saw. Now, in 2009, a 100-foot snake was spotted lurking in a river in Borneo, sparking great concern among local communities. Yeah, no kidding. Now, the photograph used to corroborate this story shows a wiggly snake-like object as it rips through the river. An unnamed member of an unnamed disaster team monitoring flood regions on the Southeast Asian island allegedly captured the image while hovering over the river in a helicopter, and then they leaked it to the public. Now, it's not clear whether the photograph is genuine or just edited, but some suggest that the snake was in fact a log or a speedboat, while others complained the color of the river in the photo was too dark. However, on the banks of the river, villagers are convinced of the massive serpent's existence and have even given it a name, Nabu, after an ancient sea serpent which can transform itself into the shapes of different animals. Now, a second picture has also emerged, showing the beast from a different angle. This time though, the anonymous photographer appears to have set up his tripod on the riverbank and captures the terrifying serpent stretched across the width of the river. Now that is honestly just terrifying. And finally, in 2022, unsettling footage of a giant snake slithering over a wall into what appears to be a porch entrance of a house went viral on Twitter. The snake making its way towards the window door of an unknown property was shared to Twitter alongside the caption, "Living near the jungle allows you to have the visit of sweet little animals." Yeah, sure, sweet and little. Ugh, I can't imagine sitting in the kitchen and just seeing that beast enter your home. Now, the origins of this video are so far unclear, but one Twitter user claimed that the motorcycle license plate indicated the location as being Central Java, Indonesia, but that is so far unconfirmed. Now, Indonesia is known for having these big snakes though, so it would make sense. Commenters though couldn't agree on what kind of snake it was, but they could all agree that it was terrifying, which I concur.
The Titanoboa, a fearsome apex predator that had very little enemies, and that was because it was bigger than the majority of them. 40 feet and over 2,000 pounds. Let's get into some terrifying giant snake footage that some people believe to be the Titanoboa. I've mentioned it previously in Titanoboa videos, but there are people out there that can help you with your giant snake problems. For some reason, snakes just love to hide out in people's attics. Check out this video of this massive snake absolutely pouring down from the ceiling just from its weight alone. At the beginning of the video, you probably would have been fooled by its tail, thinking it was some small little thing. Definitely not. This 400-pound beast comes crashing down, tearing the ceiling apart before quickly trying to slither back up into its hiding spot. I really hope their insurance covers Titanoboa damage, and hopefully the workers in the video get a raise after this. It seems to be a common occurrence with snakes as well, breaking into homes and seeking shelter in dark places during the cold months of the year. So if you live in an area with snakes, be sure to do a quick check every now and then. Seeing a regular sized snake begin to shed is weird enough, but to see a giant snake break off little flakes here and there, straight up creepy. On average, it can take up to 2 weeks for a regular snake to shed its skin. Can you imagine how long it takes for this big boy over here to do it? I'm not entirely sure where this location is, but I'm also not surprised it ended here to try and shed its skin off. It needs a rough surface to do this, allowing the friction of stone and concrete to gently pull the skin off its body as it slithers forward. People are very brave in these countries as well. Coming up this close to a snake is risky business. Then again, I would also be quite intrigued if a giant snake was slithering about on my porch. Hopefully these guys from the first video are able to take care of this monster. The Titanoboa has been known to go after alligators and other giant animals, but what if it was the other way around? That could be an interesting battle. Somebody uploaded this insane clip of an alligator dragging along a giant snake in its mouth. Nature is terrifying, and we often forget that these predators can really do crazy things when given the chance. I find it hard to believe though that this alligator managed to capture the snake without any issue, especially with how massive it is. It must have already passed on or something, but then again, I always understand underestimate how powerful alligators really are. This snake has to be at least up to 20 feet long based on the environment around it, its thick size, and in comparison to the alligator. He seems to be pretty happy with his catch though. You know, someone's definitely going to be eaten well tonight. Alligator 1, Titanoboa 0. Now we have people dealing with snakes that have nothing to do with their career. I feel the workers in this video must have seen it coming. After all, they were trying to clear out a heavily forested area for some reason, so to come across a giant snake such as this one doesn't really surprise anyone. But there you have it. Being pulled out from beneath a stack of broken trees and bushes was a giant snake dangling from the machine. Both parties look confused in the situation, whereas we have the snake who's kind of taken aback, rightfully so, and the worker who's in the machine not really knowing if he should put it down or not. Out of fear, possibly, because I can only imagine that the snake was definitely not happy after being picked up like that. I can only imagine what happened afterwards when the snake was placed back down. Have you ever seen a giant snake in the act of eating its meal? We often forget how stretchy these creatures actually are, especially when they're able to take down an entire deer and swallow it down their gullet. Contrary to popular belief, snakes do not actually unhinge their jaws, but rather the upper and lower part of their jaws are connected by extremely stretchy tendons, allowing them to pull apart quite far. Once the snake manages to get its mouth around its meal, the upper and lower jaw do a bit of an inch walk forward as it pulls the animal further and further into its body. It takes a bit of time to do, obviously based on this video, but it's incredibly cool to see how stretchy their bodies actually are. They can't chew their food either. It's all gonna go down in one swoop, only for it to remain in its outstretched stomach for about a week. A giant serpent that was once able to push down literal trees in its wake. A beast so fearsome even top predators of its time were terrified of becoming its next meal. Here are some leaked footage of alleged Titanoboas that people swear are the real deal. Snakes can climb up just about anything their tiny little belly scales can get their hands on, if that makes sense. Just like in this video, we got a striking visual of a massive snake scaling up a massive tree. The way their bodies are able to grab onto it, and at the same time have an insane amount of strength to hoist themselves up and above without the use of appendages, is absolutely mind-boggling. Although snakes tend to stick on the ground, sometimes they'll do this if they need to regulate their body heat. If the sun, like in the video, is blocked out, they will climb above the foliage to try and feel that little bit of sun on their skin. Or scales, rather. I must say though, stumbling upon this while in the woods would scare pretty much anyone. If I wasn't paying enough attention, I would definitely think it was part of the tree. This video was uploaded to X back in 2020, and although it may not be as strikingly big as the other bad boys on this list, it's still too incredibly long for my liking. Although slow, they are still powerful creatures, and we should not be fooled by its subtle movements. They are also ambush predators, so their slow movements and the color along their back serves as a hunting tactic. When they get close enough to you though, they can strike incredibly fast. They are able to strike their prey at 50 milliseconds, whereas when we put it into perspective as humans, it takes us 200 milliseconds to blink. That's insanely quick. You literally blink and you miss it. If you ever do come across a giant snake like this in the wild, it's best to keep your distance like this guy. You do not want to accidentally find yourself in the crossfire when this monster gets threatened. So what exactly do you do when a giant snake is wrapped around your work truck? Watching this video, I can't help but wonder what the steps were that led up to this point. Either way, this thing is huge, and based on the height of the truck and how thick its body is, this monster definitely has to be around at least 30 feet in length. Rightfully so, the people in this video are freaking out, because what exactly are you supposed to do in this situation? The strength of a snake is crazy when it comes to hugging the life out of their prey. You do not want to catch yourself getting in between this thing and the truck. Their bodies are pretty much all made of pure muscle. The Titanoboa has been known to take down alligators and other giant animals by its sheer force alone in these grips. Hopefully these guys just called it quits and went home. I know I would. I can always trust the more temperate areas of our planet to harbor some of the most horrifying creatures to ever exist. This short clip was taken in Indonesia, although I'm not entirely sure who uploaded it. I just hope that they're alright after this. I can't imagine living in a location that has certain predatory species at this size, but I can't imagine that a beast with this length brings irreparable damage to the plant life and locals' homes in the area. I wouldn't be surprised if the snake had come across some of the livestock these people had and stole from them. It wouldn't be hard because who who would be able to go up against this thing? It's a little bit hard to tell in this video, but I wouldn't be surprised if this thing measured up to about 30 feet as well, based on its environment. However big or small it is, keep it away from me. Have you ever heard about the famous Congo snake? The snake was first discovered, allegedly, by Arthur C. Clarke, a Belgian helicopter pilot who was making his way home after a mission he was doing back in 1959. Clarke states that while he was going over the Congo, he saw his supposed snake and made a couple passes at it while trying to snag the perfect photo. He claims that because he's a pilot, he's able to measure certain things from a distance, giving rough estimates as how big they would actually be if he was on the ground with them. I would say the snake I saw there was close to 50 feet, Clarke claims. The color was a very deep green and brown, with a very wide belly. The snake then began to rise upright, rising to about 10 feet in height, with its jaws looking large and triangular. Quote, "It could have easily eaten up a man," end quote. There was also the possibility of wanting to make a quick buck out of something outrageous back then, since life was extremely difficult post World War II. But who knows? I try to keep an open mind, which is probably stupid when it comes to the internet, but keeps me entertained nonetheless. The Titanoboa, the ferocious 40-foot apex predator that ruled these lands millions of years ago. Could these videos be the proof of that? A 40-foot-long fossil of the Titanoboa was discovered in the Seta-Hon. Back in 2003, scientists finally made a breakthrough, proving the existence of this giant prehistoric snake. Way back when, the Seta-Hon used to be a very lush, humid environment, home to all sorts of wildlife, including the notorious Titanoboa. But now it is a desolate area, and a major hotspot for archaeologists to dig up some ancient secrets. The best thing about this discovery was that the researchers of this project finally had a snake skull that wasn't in millions of pieces. When the Titanoboa roamed the earth, they were an apex predator, being 40 feet long and weighing over a ton. There wasn't anything that this guy couldn't take on. When some people stand by the replica model in a museum, its body width can reach up to a grown man's hip. That's big. It could even wrestle alligators and other enormous creatures at the time. Would you have been able to take on the Titanoboa? A Titanoboa tries to escape after swallowing a pig. If you're from a warmer climate area, you better be prepared for giant snakes making their way onto your farms. This video was uploaded a few years ago, but it showcases this massive monster trying to make a great escape after chowing down on someone's pig. Obviously, the locals weren't going to allow it to get away without a fight, so they decided to set up a plan and trap it. This is what we are seeing here, and they successfully managed to place a rope around its head to secure it in place. As the snake is trying to slither out of its grasp, it starts to knock down the area around it. Eventually, it seems to give up and accepts its fate of being caught. If I was a farmer, I too would be very upset and try to capture it as well, making sure it never shows its face around these parts again. A 30-foot-long snake nearly knocks over a fisherman's boat. Choosing to fish in the Amazon is a bold move, because you never know what might be lurking beneath the water. To no one's surprise, this massive snake with a giant belly bumps beneath the man's boat as it tries to make it to the other side of the river. You can see his boat rock as the snake knocks it with its full belly, as it normally would when coming into contact with a nearly 500-pound beast of pure muscle. If there weren't any fish in the area, they're definitely gone now. I feel that if the snake was really provoked, it would have no issue taking down this tiny little boat. The strength of snakes are immeasurable, especially with some of the species being able to hug their prey so hard that it cuts off their circulation. A 50-foot Titanoboa makes a breaking news headline. When a supposed Titanoboa makes the news, you know it's serious. This was uploaded about 5 years ago, and it showcases a news station talking about a giant snake video going viral all over X. The video is quite old and grainy, but we are able to see for the most part what is happening in the video. The supposed 50-foot snake in question was crossing the Amazon basin. This thing looks absolutely massive, and I can only imagine the fear on the cameraman's face when coming across this horrible thing. The Amazon is home to many giant snakes, and specifically the descendants of the Titanoboa as well, the anaconda and the boa constrictor. This video might just prove though that the biggest one of them all is still out there lurking beneath the shadows. What are your thoughts on this discovery? Is it the Titanoboa? A massive snake was spotted while kayaking in South America. A group of tourists were being taken around around a nearby jungle on kayaks when they came across something unforgettable. What should have been a relaxing day along the water turned into witnessing the longest snake they had ever encountered. It was at least 20 feet long with a very thick body, definitely weighing well over 400 pounds. One of the tourists quickly took out their phone to record the encounter, getting a good shot of its entire body. The tour guide also appears a little bit shaken up, as if he is unsure if he should continue to move the group forward or turn them back around. However, the group slowly gets closer to this creature. A little too close if you ask me. Thankfully, the snake doesn't seem to be moving in a defensive position, or moving at all rather, so I doubt anything abnormal happened after the recording stopped. Either way, quite the sight to see on a vacation. The Titanoboa might still be out there, stalking beneath the shadows of the Amazon. This horrifying monster is not to be underestimated. Let's just see how terrifying this giant snake can truly be in these videos. A Titanoboa was spotted beneath the murky waters in the Amazon. Based on the environment around it, this giant snake definitely had to be around 40 feet in length. Its body thickness in comparison to the foliage makes all the trees look tiny next to it. It was a family on vacation that noticed this thing, with one of the members pointing out something massive moving beneath the waves. At first, they thought it was some sort of crocodile or alligator, until they realized this thing didn't have any arms. It just kept going the more it swam, its length almost immeasurable and never ending. It is horrifying to see it being so smooth with its movements that it doesn't disrupt the water around it. Imagine this coming up to your boat unsuspectingly, without any warning being given before making its final strike. Thankfully though, this person seems to be filming from a high up location, giving them a better chance at dodging this thing if it decides to see them as a meal. The Titanoboa gets tricked into getting trapped with a chicken. The majority of people would be absolutely petrified when it comes to trapping snakes, but these guys in Southeast Asia seem to have it all under control. After there had been reports of a giant snake getting into their livestock, the locals decided to bring it upon themselves to try and trap the monster, since the authorities wanted nothing to do with it. Using only a piece of string tied to a tiny bare tree and a chicken on the other side of the opening, they actually managed to capture and trap this thing. Whatever materials they got over there is insane. This giant snake's 500-pound body comes crashing into the small wooden pillars surrounding it, coiling itself up and creating these massive waves. I'm surprised the string that they used managed to hold that thing in place, because a snake's strength is not to be underestimated. Thankfully, no chicken was harmed in the making of this video. A Titanoboa was spotted sleeping on the banks of the Amazon. While on the hunt for something new and interesting within the Amazon, these researchers captured something they would not soon forget. Up in the northern parts of the Amazon, giant snakes have been making daring appearances, and people are starting to speculate that the Titanoboa is making its face known as well. Whatever this thing is, it looks massive, especially when you compare it to the roots of giant trees around it. They were speculating that this thing had to be around at least 30 feet. The Titanoboa fossil that was discovered in 2003 measured over 40 feet in length, so for this guy to be even remotely close to that length says a lot about its descendants. Although it would have been beneficial to go up to this thing and gather more information about it, sometimes it's best to just view giant snakes from a far distance. A man stood right next to the legendary Titanoboa. Some people just aren't afraid of snakes, even when they're up close and personal like this man in the video was. While on a hike, the man spotted movement out of the corner of his eye off in the distance. At first, what appeared to look like a log started to move, and only did he realize he was looking at a giant snake. It was the first time this guy had seen such a sight and immediately needed to take some footage of it. While the snake doesn't seem to be too aggressive, it definitely doesn't appear to be too happy with this guy coming so close to its burrow. As the man gets closer to get a better shot, the snake quickly makes a break for its home entrance, slithering deep underground to try and get away from the paparazzi. Thankfully though, the man didn't try and yank it out for more footage and simply let it be. A 40-foot long snake shows up in the Congo. Back in the 1950s, a pilot managed to capture a striking photo of what he believes to be the Titanoboa. Now, in our era, another pilot supposedly managed to capture the same type of snake that was discovered all those years ago. I'm not sure who the original uploader of this video is, but you can tell based on the surroundings how massive this thing is. It had to be at least 40 feet long, and some people were even stating that this had to be a direct lineage of the famous Congo snake that the pilot saw way back when. It even has the same solid, dark color along its body. This definitely was a sight to behold, and although there isn't much to this footage of how short it is, still remarkable nonetheless. The legendary Titanoboa has been extinct for centuries. Or so we thought. People have been reporting its sightings as of recent, and these are some of those encounters. Let's check them out. The 42-foot-long Titanoboa was spotted in Brazil crossing a river. In all my days, I've never seen a Titanoboa video as convincing as this. Uploaded on the 15th of this month, a group of tourists noticed a strange creature trying to get itself over a small waterfall. It's clear that it's a snake, but as it continues to slither over the rocks, its body becomes bigger and bigger. If you remember when the Titanoboa was first discovered in the Cerrejón, it was described that the thickness of its body was the same height as a grown man's waist. Here in this video, I don't know about you, but that looks oddly similar to that same description. Everyone gathered here when people pointed out that this massive thing was making its way across, and since then the video has gone viral on the original uploader's page. If you came across this, do you think your mind would change about the Titanoboa? The Titanoboa was spotted overlooking the public from on top of a building. There is something absolutely horrifying seeing a giant snake look down at you from a higher spot, whereas when they're just at the bottom, you feel like you're more in control. But in this video, I feel as though we are at the mercy of this monster. You're probably wondering, however, how did it manage to get up there? Well, snakes have this really cool thing they do called lasso locomotion, where they constantly wrap themselves like a corkscrew as they try and squeeze while pushing themselves to the top. I can imagine that this is what that snake had to do to get up there. Although you don't want to find yourself anywhere near its tail when it does. That tail can take you down hard as it swings around. If you saw a snake of this size chilling on a building, how would you react? A flood caused the Titanoboa to come out of hiding. When there are massive floods, sometimes it forces certain creatures to come out of their hiding spot once their home fills up with water. Unlucky for us, snakes can survive underwater. As people were trying to evacuate the horrible waves that came their way, one person in particular noticed this weird, lumpy animal body making its way down a flooded path. Snakes are much better at hiding themselves beneath the water, but what really gave it away was that the snake's stomach was so enlarged by a past meal, it caused the gas in its belly to float up to the surface. Whatever it decided to eat that day, it was big and it was plentiful. Did you know snakes could pretty much eat any animal in the world? Their body is incredibly stretchy. They're able to stretch 4 times as wide as their body. Their heads may be small, but their appetite isn't. This man just saved his pets from a massive snake attack. While peacefully resting in the middle of the night, the sound of cats and dogs howling and screaming awoke the man from his slumber. Quickly going over to where they kept their animals, the guy noticed the snake trying to make its way into the pet cage. Thankfully, they were caged up, so the snake wouldn't even be able to get to them. It was still terrifying for the animals nonetheless. Immediately, the man gets to work trying to yank it by its tail, pulling it out from around the cage. This snake is giving a man a fair fight as well, really holding itself tightly against the furniture as it manages to secure the head. It definitely seems like he has done this before, which sucks royally, but the way he handled the snake with a specific routine is quite admirable. The Titanoboa was discovered in the Congo back in 1959. A retired pilot by the name of Arthur C. Clarke swore he saw the legendary Titanoboa snake while returning back from a mission. His statement was that he was flying over this area, he noticed a bizarre, large black object coiling up beneath the trees. His immediate thought was to think it was a snake, which it was, but it was an absolute monster of a creature. He claims that because he's a pilot, he's able to measure certain things from a distance, giving rough estimates as to how big they would actually be if he was on the ground with them. I would say the snake I saw there was close to 50 feet, Clarke claims. The color was a deep green and brown and a very wide belly. The snake then began to rise up, rising to about 10 feet in height, with its jaws looking large and triangular. Quote, "It could have easily eaten up a man," end quote. Have you heard about the Titanoboa, the legendary apex predator that can swallow a dinosaur whole? Some people say it's still out there, lurking in our forests even today. Let's see if they're correct. The fossil of the legendary Titanoboa was discovered in 2002 out in the Cerrejón. Way back when, Cerrejón wasn't actually the dry and desolate place that everyone today is used to. It actually used to be a very tropical, swampy rainforest with temperatures to around 30 to 32 degrees. And knowing snakes, it's no surprise there would be an abundance of snake remains lying about in the now dry landscape. It is a hotspot for picking up fossils, but the Titanoboa discovery was not on their bingo card of that year. The person to have allegedly discovered the fossil was an intern at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute by the name of Jorge Moreno Bernal. He then brought along both Jonathan Bloch and Jason Heed, two other paleontologists from Nebraska and Florida, who then finally gave it the name Titanoboa cerrejonensis and took up the length of over 40 feet. They dubbed him the Lord of the Jungle and apparently had a waist so thick that could reach up to a man's waist. One of them stated, "You just never find a snake skull." And we have one. When I find something good, it's a biological reaction. It starts in my stomach. This Titanoboa tried to make a daring escape after stealing a man's sheep. Snakes do not care what their next meal is going to be. If it's alive and accessible in any way, it's going down the hatch. With this video here, a snake tried to pull a clever little stunt by attacking a local's livestock, swallowing it whole while they weren't looking, and proceeded to make a grand escape through their back door, or window I should say, of their barn area. Of course though, the owner here knew that this snake had been bothering them for quite some time, and what they planned way in advance was to trap this guy when it came back around. They were ready, and as the snake began to climb through the window, they quickly secured a rope around its neck and pulled hard, trapping this monster in place. Eventually, it succumbs to its defeat, falling back down onto the dirt floor and going limp. The Titanoboa is hiding beneath the streets of South America. This video has absolutely terrified the locals in this town, with one woman passing by an open hole and realizing there was something terrifying beneath the rubble. She quickly pulls out her phone and begins to record this bizarre encounter. The woman zooms into its scales and we briefly see this thing moving. She definitely did not want to stick around and find out exactly what it was and proceeded to walk away. The thing is definitely massive too, with the width on it having to definitely be around a couple of feet. Snakes love to hide in weird places from people, and in this particular video, it chose to make its home beneath the streets of South America. If you came across this thing in person, what would you do? Would you be daring enough to poke a stick at it? These massive juvenile Titanoboas fall from the ceiling. Some people who deal with pest control have to go through the craziest scenarios that we could only have nightmares of. One night, a young man had reported that he was hearing movement up in his attic, wondering if a random animal accidentally found an entrance into it and made a home there. Calling up people who deal with this sort of thing, they came face to face with something much more than what they bargained for. First thing that they did was cut a hole into the ceiling and then dropped a singular tail. They were up against a snake and, thinking nothing of it, they decided to pull on it. Not even a minute goes by before the entire ceiling collapses, revealing one juvenile Titanoboa and another snake getting busy in a secret hiding space. Would your insurance cover that for you? Workers accidentally unleashed the Titanoboa from its slumber. In this video, we got this massive snake hanging from construction equipment, its body nearly the length of the entire machine arm. These guys were simply trying to make a clearing for some new road or building, but accidentally dug deep into the home of the Titanoboa. The snake is probably just as confused and terrified as these guys in the video, as it tries to scale upward and grab hold of the metal arm to try and escape its grasps. The workers had no idea how they were going to go about this, leaving it hanging there out of fear that once they let the snake go, it would attack them right away. Especially after ruining its sleep, you don't want to be in the crossfire when it unleashes its predatory fury. What would you do? The Titanoboa will show no mercy when you accidentally find yourself in its territory. It will hunt you down and take you as prey, just like it's almost happened with these close encounters. This man attempts to stalk and grab the Titanoboa right out of the water. When you think of large snakes, they often tell you that they can weigh up to at least 400 pounds, so attempting to pull one out of the water is a very risky move. While canoeing down an Amazon basin, a man came across this giant snake trying to swim in hide from their presence. Its stomach is absolutely massive after having eaten something fairly bigger than itself, and gave its hiding spot away. The man thought it would be a great idea to try and stalk it, following it closely and attempting to grab it if given the opportunity to do so. When that so-called opportunity arose, he is quick to grab the end of its tail before it's able to make a grand escape. The snake is absolutely terrified and tries to wriggle free, but because of this though, the two of them got into insane trouble with the government afterwards. Would you try and pull its tail like that? Another underwater Titanoboa nearly knocks over this man's boat trying to pass by. While simply trying to get some fishing in, this man noticed this bizarre snake-like movement make its way over towards his boat. Again, its bloated stomach gave its appearance away, and he was taken aback at how massive this thing was. When it got closer to his boat, the guy braced for impact, terrified that he was going to be knocked over from the sheer force of this monster, making a beeline towards him. The monstrous snake rocks his boat as it tries to sneak its way under it, rattling him a little bit as it finally manages to make it past. The man, however, still mesmerized with its size, follows the camera with it as it tries to disappear into a bush. Based on the stomach size alone, this snake had to be at least 25 feet long, so I understand the panic that this man was possibly feeling. Thankfully, it already ate. The Titanoboa was caught on the run after it had just broken into someone's home. There are so many reports of people noticing more snakes finding themselves comfortable in people's houses, often discovering them in their attics, their beds, and even their toilets. Whenever the temperature becomes too much for snakes to handle outside, they'll attempt to hide in the closest shelter possible, even if that means there are a bunch of humans living inside of it. In this video though, this snake is climbing over a hill after it just slithered out from someone's window, not wanting to deal with the screaming woman who woke up and saw it in her kitchen. This woman began swinging around a bat trying to get this thing to leave, and when it finally got the hint that this would not be a safe area to hide from the weather, it moved on. Would you react the same? This juvenile Titanoboa was ambushed by locals after accidentally being seen on a hike. When you're hiking out in the wilderness, you're bound to come across bizarre circumstances that make you want to run for the hills. When it comes to witnessing your very first giant snake sighting, it's one to remember. A man had decided to take a morning stroll along the hills of Balido when he noticed this giant, dark, shadowy figure crossing the fields off in the distance. At first, it just simply looked like a log, until he got closer and noticed that it was actually a giant snake. Not sure what species of snake it was, he had a hunch based on the massive size alone that it had to be a juvenile Titanoboa. He took out his phone and immediately started recording, getting up close and personal with this incredibly dangerous animal, maybe a little too courageous. The snake, however, did not want to deal with this mess and tried to bugger off. The Titanoboa was caught in the act of trying to sneak into a local town, hunting for pets and people. Snakes are known to take on any animal that lives and breathes, and that includes us. Sadly, when people live in an area that has dangerous animals such as these, they need to keep their pets safe as well. When a local town has both humans and pets that a giant snake can go after, it will take up that opportunity. This man captured the Titanoboa in the act of being on the hunt for its next meal, and you could tell based on how its stomach isn't enlarged with food, it's still on the lookout. This thing is massive, and as the camera pans from the bottom of its tail to try and get a look at its head, it had to be at least 30 feet long. If you saw the snake trying to get into your town, would you be brave enough to stop it? The Titanoboa was once thought to be a myth belonging only in nightmares, but after its real fossil discovery in 2002, everything changed. Let's check out some Titanoboa sightings that have left the public in shock. This man actually got to swim next to the Titanoboa. Snakes being able to swim underwater for extended periods of time is terrifying because you never know when one might bite ya when you're least expecting it at the beach. Snakes are able to hold their breath for at least 30 minutes, if not more, and are still able to strike at you while doing so. This man and his camera crew had just come across a 30-foot long juvenile Titanoboa, and they were going to record every minute of their encounter. While diving into the water, they did their best to try and get as close as possible to her face, and you can clearly tell that she is not happy about this. They are getting extremely close to comfort and might have forgotten that a snake can strike you in 50 to 90 milliseconds, not nearly enough time for you to get away. The Titanoboa and another snake are seen falling through the ceiling of someone's home. Snakes are finding the best spot to hide being right within our attics. It provides a safe space for them, hiding from predators and apparently being a great space to hang out out with their snake friends. This video was taken in Malaysia when workers were on the scene for a woman who told them about mysterious sounds happening above her head in the walls. As they cut a piece of the ceiling off, a singular tail came down, out, and surprised them. And as they tried to continuously yank on this thing, all of the ceiling just came crumbling to pieces. There, a Titanoboa and one other buddy of theirs were seen all cuddled up, trying to hide within the dark crevices of this poor woman's home. It's a good thing she called when she did. Who knows if they would have seen her as a meal one of these nights when they decided to come out. A 40-foot-long Titanoboa was finally captured on camera swimming downstream. The Titanoboa was notorious for being one of the biggest reptiles of its time, taking on alligators and other various dinosaurs simply because it had the size to do so. This video that was taken by a tourist finally shows us that Titanoboas can still reach their monstrous size if we leave their natural habitats alone. Based on the video, as it's trying to climb over a rock, we get to see that its body matches the exact same description as the discovery that was made in 2002, rumored that the Titanoboa can reach the height of an adult man's waist. People are gathered around here in awe as they try to figure out how a snake of that size is able to exist. If you are the one watching this guy cross the river, how would you respond to this? The Titanoboa was caught making more Titanoboa babies. We know that some snakes are able to reproduce asexually, meaning they don't necessarily need a male to help aid in that. But I guess with this female Titanoboa, she was feeling rather lonely. While exploring some parts of the wilderness, this woman came across one massive snake and a smaller counterpart, all coiled up together, coming down a dirt path. At first, it looks like one massive snake that's covered in a bunch of debris, but it's actually how they mate with one another. The male will wrap itself around the female as they both travel and search for a burrow to create offspring in. It's absolutely bizarre though watching a female Titanoboa string along this tiny little creature into its burrow. Researchers have stated that when two snakes try and mate, they can remain in this entanglement for hours. How romantic. This Titanoboa strikes the cameraman out of nowhere. People often forget that snakes give you very clear signs before they decide to strike you. When you get too close within their personal space, they begin to coil up around their head, and with a spring-like action, they project themselves forward at such intense speeds. Some snake specialists even state that to avoid having a snake strike at you, you need to stop them from winding up that first coil. With this snake in the video though, the poor guy did not stand a chance at the end when the snake finally made its move, leading the video to end abruptly and the viewers questioning what happened to the guy afterwards. He did write in the description though that he was okay and that this was his own snake pet. Still, even with pets, you never know when they will decide to turn on you. Do you have any footage of the Titanoboa on your travels? Send them to us and I'll be sure to talk about them in the next video.